My name is Christina Ferris. You might have known me by Christina Hughes. I recently got married. I'm the same person, I promise. Uh, if you're looking for me on LinkedIn, you can find me with Christina Hughes or Ferris. I made sure you can find me both ways. Since this is only 20 minutes, I'm going to fly through my slide deck, which is only, I think, 3 slides that are important. So the first one, a little bit about me, big thing, GitHub link. I will have this up at the end as well, so it'll have all the code we're going to go through today because we're going to fly through some stuff, and I want to make sure you guys can use this in the future as well. Now, again, I'm not going to go through all of these. This is mostly so you have a slide deck later that you can refer to, right? That's the whole goal of this. So I've got a pre-flight checklist for using Power Query or M. So little things like it has to start with a let statement. You have to have every step in at a comma. Trust me, that will be the #1 mistake you make if you're making your own M code. Always make sure you've got that last step as a comma, or that last character as a comma. All right, so I'm not going to go through these, but again, they are in the code and they're in this slide deck as well. If we have time at the end, I'll walk through them a little bit slower. But with that, you guys, we're already at demo time. How fun is this? You guys like these 20-minute sessions? It's like, all right, here we go. All right, so I'm going to pop over into my handy-dandy M code. Now, for our convenience, it made everything gray, which is super helpful. Let me go ahead and try and change that preference real quick. I am using Sublime Text. The reason is if you save your M code as a .m, it will make all of the syntax highlighting for you, which is just really nice. Unfortunately, that syntax highlighting changed all of my notes to gray, but all the code is in black, so give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can change this to something that's a little bit more readable. Let me just go ahead and do a different theme. Now, we're going to keep it as is because we've got a short window. So, I'm very sorry you guys can't read the notes, but I promise they're there, and I will read through them, and we will be all good together. Now, the code, thankfully, is in black, so you guys can read that, and I will zoom in and make sure we can go through this step by step. Now, normally, I would tell you why you need a date table. If you're here and you use Power BI, raise your hand if you use a date table. Perfect. I don't have to explain it. Awesome. All right. So the goal of this is we can make a date table using just M code. You don't have to worry about if your SQL Server has a date table. You don't have to worry about uploading an Excel file. You don't have to worry about somebody telling you to use a date table, but that date table ended in 2021, right? All of those problems get solved by using our own date table. And the fun of this is you guys get to learn a lot of M, right? So, all right, let's get started. Now, the first thing is we're going to be setting some variables. Now, if you're new to M, you might have not known that you can actually create variables in M. The way to do this is to just make a step that is not referenced anywhere else. Easy enough. So what we're going to do is I've started this out with a start date of the end of 2021. Now, you can make this date whatever you would like. Again, you're going to have access to this code. All you have to do is upload it into Power BI. Beautiful. I'll show you at the end how it works. But all you'll have to do when you want to use it yourself is change that start date. So start date is our first variable. It uses a hashtag date, as you'll notice there. So hashtag date, what that does is it's going to allow us to create a date formatted field. So we don't have to guess. M will understand that we are trying to create a date, and it will function as such. Other instances of that are going to be things like hashtag duration, hashtag date time. You can create all of these things in M, but you can't necessarily create them using the GUI. So this is where this kind of custom M knowledge comes in handy. So the second piece of this is going to be our end date. Now this I have made dynamic on purpose. You can change which part of it is dynamic for you. Wow, it is not showing any highlighting. That's okay, I can point. So in line 15, end date right here, you can see how we've got that hashtag date again. I've got a date.year, a date time, .local now. These are a lot of little codes, right? So if we back out of it, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing today's date and time, and I'm just grabbing the year from that. Because what I want is I'm going to take the year from today, I'm going to add 1, and I'm going to go to January of that year. What that's going to give me is this full calendar year. Now, how can you adjust this? If you wanted to adjust this, you could have it just go to this year, right? So instead of adding this +1 at the end in the red here, you could just get rid of that +1 and then have the month be dynamic, right, or the day be dynamic, and have it all go to just today. For me, I purposely like to have a little extra on the end if you're doing forecasting, right? If you're doing anything in the future, you're going to need a date table that ends in the future. So just keep that in mind. Now this next variable is length. We're just grabbing the duration in days. Now again, M is really particular about how it stores data. So duration in days here is going to give us something that M can then use to create a list of dates. So in order to create this list of dates, if I kind of scroll down a little bit, you'll notice I've got list.dates, start date, length, duration, 1, and then all of those little things at the end. Now what this means is it is going to start by creating that list of dates with my start date as the beginning, the length, which we just calculated, as the second parameter, and the last one is going to be duration. And what I've told it with this hashtag duration1 is to increment by days. If you need something that increments by hours, by minutes, by seconds, those are the next few blocks in there. So if I wanted it to increment by an hour, I could do 0, 1, and then 0, 0. If I wanted to do minute, it's the next spot, and then so on. In this case, I actually don't want a billion rows, right? I just want dates. So I'm going to keep it to dates, and it's going to just go by days. All right, now let's actually see some of this M, right, that we're making. That'd be good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this into Power BI so we can see it. If you are using this on your own in the future, how you would do this is go into a new source, and then we're going to go to blank query. Now, blank query is going to allow us to go into the advanced editor, and we are just going to paste over with our code. Now, again, I am going really fast through this. If you have questions at the end, please find me later. I am really happy to talk through this with you. You'll notice I did include the pre-flight checklist at the beginning of the code as well. So if that's something you want to take home with you, please do. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through these steps in Power Query. So again, I've set my start date. And give me 1 second. I'm going to open my Zoom It app. I was so excited. Forgot to open Zoom It. There we go. OK. So in here, you'll see we have end date. We've got start date. Also, all of those notes that I've put in there, you can hover over these little eye icons, and it will put in those for you, so you don't have to keep going back and forth to the advanced editor. That's also a tip if you want to comment your own M code. This is how you would do it. So let's go back here. We've made our variables. I'm going to go to my source, and you can see we now have a list. Now, one fun thing about lists is that they're not tables, right? So we need a table. So the next step is going to convert it to a table. If I were doing this in the GUI, we would just use this function right here, convert to table. But I've given you the shortcut, which is just to have M code that you're pasting in here. Something else that's cool about Power Query is if you write it in M, you can also use this in a data flow gen too. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot you can do with M now. So we've converted it to a table. And then we're going to do a few things, boring things like renaming our column, right? We're going to change it to a date. And then we're going to do a date key. So now I'm going to hop back into our code so you guys can see a couple more things. Again, I've got comments in all of this that are illegible because it's white on gray. But they're all in there, I promise. So if I scroll down a little bit, we're going to go look at line 27. So if I'm creating a date key, the reason for this is I want easy join to my fact tables. So in theory, a really good star schema is going to have a date key instead of the actual date that you're going to join to for compression reasons. So instead of having a date type, I'm likely joining to an integer. And if I have already talked to my DBA and they really like me, they might have made that integer a standard, year, month, day, and I can just join that by creating this date key in my calendar. If they have not, you might need to do an extra step here to join to your date calendar to get that proper key, or create that key in your fact table that you're joining to, right? Not the end of the world, just want to call out that's what this is doing. The next step here is we're going to create some columns. So this is where it gets fun. I am a lazy DAX writer. I don't know about you guys, but I really don't like complicated DAX. So the way I get around that is by making really complicated M, right? Exciting. So if I hop back into Power BI, I'm going to show you guys a couple more things. So you've got your standards, right? We want year, month, and day. So if I kind of hover over these, you'll notice I've got where I'm inserting a year column. We've got month. This is month name, month with 3 letters, and a month year. So if I come back out of here, they're actually pretty simple code that you could do in the GUI. So if you're not familiar with the Power Query Editor, if you were going to make these kind of fields and you already had a date column like we do, you could go into add column, and then underneath date, you would get these options. So if I kind of scroll over here, you could put in the year, the month, the day, the week, all of that through the GUI. The one you can't do is this 3M for month. And again, this is just so I can solve any business need that might come up. There's going to be that one person who says, actually, can I see the month in just 3 letters? Oh, and can you add the year to it? And you're like, yes, of course, no problem. So to do that, it's a pretty simple code in here. I've got a table add column, which is going to be the standard step. You'll see it all over this code because we're adding a lot of columns. And what it's going to do is it's going to refer back. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of M history for you, or a little syntax. So if you look at all of these, they refer to the previous step. The reason is all of these table dot functions, they all require a table as the first parameter. And so what you're telling it to do is look at the previous table or step in Power Query in order to add the column to that. So that's all that's doing. We're going to grab that previous table. We're going to make a new column. We're going to call it MMM. Change it to whatever you'd like. I won't take it personally. And then we're going to use text start, and we're going to just grab the 3 letters. That's it. So if you know what you want to achieve, it's pretty easy to write M, but I find that the hardest part is knowing what exists, 1, and 2, knowing where you have to capitalize, because it is case sensitive. So if you did not know that, congratulations, you learned something new. Thankfully, not white space sensitive, so add all the spaces you want to your heart's content. All right, so the next piece, like I said, is going to be month year. This is really similar to the last one. We're going to use a text combine, and that is going to grab the first 3 letters of our month, that column we just made, and we're going to add year to it with a space. The reason, again, a lot of reporting needs, if you have like a drop-down filter, they want to be able to select the month year. It's going to be a lot easier for them to do that than for you to put 2 slicers on a page, 1 for year and 1 for month. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind as we're going along. That's kind of the goal here, is make report development easy. So the next one is going to be making columns for days, day of the week. Again, this is pretty standard stuff. You can find it in that GUI spot I just showed you. Again, we're doing 3 letters for the day, so you can kind of get sun, to, mun, all that kind of good stuff. It's in the wrong order, but you all know what I meant. So the next piece is the interesting stuff. So that's why I was flying through a little bit, because this is the fun stuff. So if you have ever made these kind of columns before on your own, you might have remembered that when you put them in a visual, they sort alphabetically. That's not what you want. Months are not alphabetically ordered because some Roman person decided they shouldn't be. So instead, we have to do things like creating sorting columns, which is super fun and not complicated at all, as you can tell by the 3 lines of indented text. So one of them, we're going to start off with month day because it's a pretty simple one. This one is going to be just those 3-letter month, and then I've appended the day to it. And what we're going to do is, in order to create a sorting column, basically, if you look at this, it's going to take the length from month, and then it's going to add a 0 in front of it. So what that means is if month is January, that number is 1. I'm going to add a 0 in front of it. And then what I want to do is take from day the same thing. If it's 1, I'm going to add a 0 in front of it, and I'm going to put those together. So what I now have is a month number and a day number, and no matter what, it's going to be 4 digits long. If I sort that alphabetically, it'll be in the correct order I want, because I now have a 0, 1 instead of a J for January. So just something to keep in mind. That's why these are in here. Some of them have 2 purposes. So we are running really short on time. Week columns are super helpful for you guys if you want to have that one CEO who wants to see everything by the week ending of Sunday instead of Saturday. This solves that problem for you. Again, a lot of this is just from experience. If you don't need a column, delete it, right? No harm, no foul. You'll have the code somewhere else. This is the one that I want to make sure we cover real quick. It took a lot of math to figure out some of these. So it's the blank to date columns. Oh no, not these ones. These ones are easy. So if you are looking for in your functions, you need something like, hey, I need to know all of my sales year to date. Now I can just pull in this field that says is year to date and then just say equals 1, equals 0, and then you're done. You don't have to worry about some crazy less than or equal to and then have today in there. This is going to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to skip ahead. This is the one. So if you see, we've got create blank ago columns. These ones I personally love in visuals as filters. So it will give you a rolling however many months ago. So if I have a visual that's a rolling 12 months, I can now just add this field of months ago to it, and it will automatically move with whatever day I'm on. Stuff like that is going to make your life so much easier, and it makes my life a lot easier, and I want to share that with you guys. So with that, there is some math that went into the work day of the week. Feel free to look at that and correct me if you dare. No, just kidding. It took quite a few worksheets to figure that one out, unfortunately, but it basically looks at the day of the week and accounts for that and then does some kind of date difference. Feel free to look at that closer. Again, it's got a lot of notes, so definitely happy to talk to you guys about it later as well. One of the craziest pieces, I think I still have, yeah, I got 3 minutes. Okay. So one of the craziest pieces about this work days ago is it has to account for Sunday. And so if you need to adjust this, right, basically what I've got it doing is it sets Sunday as 0 and it'll set Saturday as like Friday. So it kind of pushes those 2 days. So that way you don't lose data, because I think that's one of the biggest problems with work days ago is you would miss any data that came in on a Saturday or Sunday. So that's what this is doing, is it's rolling them into the closest weekday. So just be careful if you're using that and you didn't want that intention. You can adjust this and get rid of those pieces, right? Just drop those days if you need to. But all right, with that, we have 3 minutes. You guys want to see the full table? Yeah. So let's come back in here. Again, there are notes on every single step. So if you are curious about what something does, hover over it. You'll see the note. When I come back to the bottom, what ends up happening is we get this beautiful date table that now has all these fields. So if I click on one of these rows, it's a little bit easier to see what's in here. So we've got calendar date, date key, year, month name, all the good stuff. If I scroll down a little bit, I've also got, hey, is this year to date? Is it month to date? Is it week to date? Current year to date, current month to date, all kinds of great stuff. Also the months ago, I've got days ago, all the things that I would want. Now, one thing to keep in mind is I built this with months ago being negative and days ago being positive. If you need to flip that, easy. Added times -1. Pick whichever one you would like, but the idea here again is to make your life as a developer easy. So, all right, I'm going to exit out of this. We're going to go back to the QR screen so you guys can get all that good information. All right, we are at 1 minute. I have 1 minute for questions, guys. Any questions? Yes. Yes. So when the question was if I have explicitly told the start date that it is, or set the start date variable as a date, why did I then have to convert it later? The reason is because when I made the list of dates and then converted it to a table, M forgets. It forgets what I wanted, and it just says, screw you, I'm going to make this a text field. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted at all. But I do need to have it as a date in order to get the duration. Yeah, so unfortunately, we do have to do that one twice. But the goal of this code is it follows a dry methodology, which is a don't repeat yourself, which is a pretty standard rule in any development. And I think us as Power BI developers, we get to inherit that now, right? We have a lot more tools in our tool belt to actually do that. So, cool. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, what would we use is current year to date for? I realized really quickly that I didn't always have my reports filtered down to this year, but every now and again, my CEO would only want to see this calendar year. Or maybe they only want to see this calendar year's sales. So now I can say, hey, you know what? I have sales and I've got to calculate in a filter. And I say, is current year to date equals 1? And now I can divide that against anything else that was year to date because those are going to be zeros for is in current year to date. So one way I've used this before is if I have, let's say, 2024 sales and I've got 2023 sales, I'm looking at them side by side, and I actually need to get the average of my sales year to date for the previous 10 years and then compare that to this current year's sales. One way to do that would be to use that is year to date function and grab that average for those previous 10 years. And then if I'm grabbing just this year's, I can just flip it to the is current year to date. I no longer need 2 filter contexts. I can just use the 1 column, which will make your DAX run a lot faster. Yeah. Oh, you can use is year to date for sure. Is current year to date, the benefit again is just if you need something for just this calendar year. So if my data is like 10, 15 years old, and I only want to see this calendar year, that's what that flag is for. And again, you don't have to use it, right? If you're like, all my stuff is only going to be year to date across years because that actually gives me a better trend, which I would agree with you, go for it, right? Delete the current year to date. So, yeah, good question. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So the biggest benefit is actually, and sorry, we are at time, so if you guys need to head out, go ahead. But the biggest benefit I've noticed is in the ability to sum it up. So if I need to sum up the number of days where something else is true, it's a lot easier to sum up those flags. Obviously, if I had Boolean, it makes it easier to display. So you can definitely go in there and change the data types. You might have noticed, and we are at time, so I'm so sorry, guys, but real quick, because I'm just a bad student. If I come in here, when we create these, you'll notice at the end of every one of these is like an int 64.type. That's where you can swap it out for the Boolean, which I think is type Boolean, but I'm not, getting head nods. Yep, so type space Boolean would get you what you're looking for. So, yeah. Yeah, no problem. All right, cool. Thanks, guys.